Okay, let's start. Uh, Last session we talked how we can develop REST API, and today using the Flask framework. Today also we are going to the continue learns how we build RESTful API with the database as well. Here you can choose any database, MySQL, Postgres, any database as per your project. But the objective is that we are going to develop our client server architectures where our client that means they are going to use your applications and a server where you are going to develop the REST API, and the information or data sent by the client, we are going to store in the permanent storage device like a database. So yesterday, last session, we talk how our client can consume my API. They can send data, they can get data, right? And they can get data. Okay. So today we are going to discuss whatever the information receive my REST API from the client, they are going to store in the database. If a client want to get information, our API can get data from the database. So that means our application should be able to communicate with database and response data. Excuse me. Question: why need a database? Because database is the storage device where we can store our information permanently, and a later part, whenever we need, we can retrieve data in a very effective and a very uh, efficient way, you can say. Due to that, here the applications, our backend uh, integration with the database. Our objective is that how we can check our backend REST API can communicate to the database, and so that we, in the real application, whenever you are going to build a RESTful API, generally you have to communicate to the database. Whatever the customer send information, that must be stored. Later part, maybe server restart something. So in the last session, you notice we have learned our backend server side, and we have a clients that send data, and we store in the local map kind of dictionary data, return from the itself here. If something server restart happened, all the data sent by the customer were lost. So we are not going for the dummy purpose for learning the RESTful API. It's good. You can develop all the create, update, read operations on the in memory, can say in memory concept on the memory. You can store for the temporary to understand all the concept, insert, update, delete, everything, right? But in the real applications, we have to store those informations. Maybe our server restart, we have to change something, so our data cannot lost. Due to that, we are storing data in the database. The database is, you can say, in the microservice environment, you can say this is the permanent storage device. Whatever the information you are storing in the your server side, that only work for the certain period of time until your server is not started. If your server is started, whatever the data we receive from the client, we can lose. So we don't want our data can be lost. Due to that, we have to integrate our RESTful or microservice with the database. In generally, whenever you are doing any microservice and you are exposing the REST API, each microservice must have a one database, so that whatever the information you receive, your application can save in the database. Okay, that's the objective of the day. Okay, so for that, again, going to develop this API. That means you are going to build our backend application. That means your server side application, REST API, and your database. database, and a client. So here in this today talk, we are not going to more talk about the client applications. Client application can be your GUI application, a client can be your browser, client can be your postman, which help us to send the request and get the response, and you can be a curl API as well from the command lines. So lots of options you have to consume API developed by the server. You can say server as a serving the request, consume client is the consumer that consuming your API. And here we are selected a MySQL as a database. We are going to check how our application can integrate with the MySQL and get the data from the MySQL. So for those, we are first we have to set up some our environment. That means we need this kind of Flask framework, and we need some kind of again a library which help us to our backend can communicate to the database. Then we need the MySQL, some kind of a connector, MySQL library, and also we need set up our one applications REST API, and our application make the communication with the database. And after that, we are going to develop basic create, update, delete all the operations, and also we have to test these API. I'm going to use testing for this Postman. The Postman API help us to test. You can use the curl, you can use the browser, you can use any, yeah, you can make any UI application. From UI application, you can consume these API. Okay, let's. So first things for the environment setup, you have to go, you have to install. I think this at least one Flask has a framework to develop the REST API, and Flask MySQL DB is the integration point from which library we are going to the communicate. So our whatever the server code we are going to make server side, we need this Flask that help us to build our API. Okay, API. And again, we need one more kind of a module, that's the client library that help us to integrate between the our REST API with the database. So for that, I'm going to the Flask. You have to first you have to go and install these two things. Okay, and some other also we are, if you want to handle some CORS kind of things, you can also install this Flask core. But for the simplicity, we are going to just use this tool so that our web framework, that means our REST API expose, and our MySQL integration. These two libraries we have to install. The question is that how we you can install this library. So let us just copy these commands and go to the terminal here, and you can just install this the command from the your terminal. Okay, and just install. So they are already in my case we have already installed. So you can get the installation. How to check these are installation? Maybe you can also install from your let's in the PyCharm, you go to the package manager, and here you can search your install or not. Okay, so this is the my Flask already installed. If you want to check Flask MySQL DB, this is the my Flask MySQL DB as well as Flask MySQL DB. Okay, Flask MySQL. So these are the things you have in our case already have installed. And once your installation done, then we have to let's go and build our application. So before going to build my application, we need our database. Okay, because our application going to communicate with the database right now. Okay, so here you have to first you use the your REST API. You develop the API going to talk your database. So database in the last to last session we discussed how we can first you have to install your MySQL database, and MySQL database is a concept of create one database. Once we created one database, inside a database you are going to create some table, maybe table 1, table 2, table 3. So these things you do yourself. Just install MySQL, create one database, whatever database you want, and after that, we are going to create one simple table like a users. And user have a name, user have an email ID, and one user ID column. That is the auto incremented. That is the primary key. So these are the tables we are going to first create, so that our API, if our client send the one user details, our API receive them and send those requests to the database. In the database, they are going to store in the table. So that required our table. So we can go and create one table as well as. So let us just create one table. So for creating table, let's connect to the MySQL. Just log in with the MySQL from terminal with the user root and specify the password. Okay, and here so let's database says so 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 databases. So these are the databases. Last session we created the test DB. You can create test DB, and after that just uh, use even you want to create database and just mention the name of database. Use your test DB. Okay, and in this case, so tables. Okay, notice there is no table created. So let us you create one database table. So let's create table name and identify user. One table created. After that, you can just check so table, one table. If you want to create some data here, you can manually create. Let's say like maybe insert user into into users 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 and bracket you can say users Tom and value with Tom and Tom example. Okay, okay, okay. Something wrong. Users value user values column name. Okay, column name you have to match uh, users bracket. You can mention the here name and email. So one row is created. Similarly, a couple of row you want to create. Rows, rows. Okay. Leave. So in this way, if maybe your database has some existing record, select star from users. So notice we have a couple of data. So our application have already some couple of data. If our application is started, customer want to see that this record should be application able to see. Maybe customer want to add some more record, they can add. So this is our database pointer. Okay. So let's once your database created, let's we can just develop one simple Flask based REST API applications. And this is the basic setup we have to. We have to import the library which you want, and again just initialize your application and start your application. So this is your import section. This is initialization application. This is your starting your application. Okay, so this is a let's simply one create the application. So here we can go and just create one Python file. Let's just app and just mention. Okay. So here we can just created our applications import section. Here notice we have a one import Flask, one import MySQL. We're going to use them to integrate our database, and this is our application start. And here I can start our application so that in debug true, so that we are doing any changes, our application should be changes should reflect on the cell. Okay. So first things, let's how our application to communicate to the MySQL. So for MySQL, we need import MySQL from this second library. So let us talk how we can MySQL configuration. So for MySQL configuration, we have put your MySQL detail. Let us like here. So let us, I put the MySQL detail. So here say whatever the app, this is my application dot configure MySQL hostname, MySQL username, MySQL password, MySQL DB. Here you have to specify your local database. In my cases, we have a local database, then my username, then my password, and my test DB where our tables are already created. So this configuration you have to pass. If you want to know the these why we are passing the same variable, this is because this app we have to register, we have to integrate with the MySQL. So this is the MySQL modules we have imported here, and you can say, hey, these app, whatever the configuration of a database I can send you. If you go and if you want to check here, if you check this MySQL library, they have offer, you can specify this kind of a configuration. We have to tell what the MySQL host name, username, password. So these names should be same match with this library are expecting right now. So due to that, we are passing this my our minimum requirement is that where my applications, for example, let us minimum requirement. If you are going to this is the my this is the my application. This is the my application, and applications want to connect to the MySQL. The first, whenever you install MySQL, one MySQL server is going to install MySQL server is installed. In this server, you are creating the database. We are creating the database. So here, in our case, we have created the test DB. Test DB. And in this table, here we can create a couple of table. Okay. So in case we created one table, user, users, right now, user. So here we are not. This is the database. Whenever you install database, maybe install you maybe on the local machines or any third. So this machine required kind of your IP address where the your machines are running. Okay, so you can specify the IP address and the my in the event you can specify the port on which port this application is running. Application, maybe you are want to change the port, and you also specify because this is the database is secure, so you have provided what is the username and password to communicate your server. So here you can specify my username machine where the MySQL server installed. Also, we have to specify port. By default port this application, you want to change the port, you can also change the port, and you can specify the username and password. Okay, so these are the things. Whenever your application you want to communicate to the your MySQL server, first they need a IP address, they need your port on which port your my SQL is running, MySQL is running, and after that they require your database name like your test DB. Here require your DB name. So this kind of communication are required. So all this information you can pass in your application as you did this configuration. Okay, if you let's check if you want kind of a here our by default this MySQL default they are aging the port. If you want to change this port, if you want to change the port, you can just mention, hey, I want to my port as well as change. Okay, so yeah, just change this. This is the so this way you can also specify the specific port which we want. The host name, port, username, password, database. So these kind of information, if you tell our application, if my application know this information, so my application can communicate to the. So these are the minimum requirement. We have to pass your host name, machine IP address, your port on which application the database is running, and the database username, database password, and which database you are going to connect. Because one MySQL server, we have a couple of databases. So you tell which database you want to connect. Okay, so this is the way our applications are able to communicate with it. Okay, so it's clear. We are our applications. This is my applications, our REST application. With this all the configurations, now my application is going to find out, hey, this is the IP address, this IP address they are going to, this is the IP address, this is the IP address, whatever the IP address, my in case my local host, the local host they receive, go and check what the port number in this multiple ports where the multiple application is running. So they find a specific port, oh, this port your application MySQL server running in. So communicate this MySQL server, they need a username and password. They provide your username and password, then you are able to communicate with the MySQL server till now here. But you can say, hey, MySQL server, I want to communicate a specific database. Maybe here multiple database you have, so I want to communicate your test db only. So they can say, hey, test db, they can pass the test db. So in this way, the particular IP address, particular port, particular database MySQL server, you are going to communicate. So these, if you pass this just configuration, your application is able to communicate. So just here in the our application installation, I say configure, and here I am going to use the module. This is the MySQL module, and pass my app. That means my application is registered with this database. And now we have a this register variable. From this variable, you can communicate and do all kind of a query, get query, update query, delete query, whatever the operation you want, we can get. Okay, so let's going to check first API. Let's develop one API, get data from our database right now. So let's just first let's create a API that's read data from the database. Okay. Okay, so let us we are going to develop one API that going to read database from the. What is this? Duplicate line number 50. Okay, no problem. So here, what we are going to just as I said, make MySQL dot route, just my API name users, still method get, and you are go and hey say, hey, I want to get users. So for the getting user, your application going to first communicate to the database. So this is my application, this is my application. First, make a connection to the MySQL. So already we have a MySQL variable. We can say, hey, make the one connection and open the cursor and just execute select star from your users table. In the particular database, already have a user tables. So this user table, we can fetch the row, fetch the all row, we have fetched the all row, and after that we have to loop each and every row to get the one row and just retrieve all the value, maybe id, maybe name, maybe email. This is a loop, means they are making a loop and make one your list of users, and you can just return, hey, this is the list of users. So let's start and test this application. Okay, So as of now, look like we have done just created one the get API slash user and just make a MySQL connection, run select start from user query and fetch one and test. So let's start the application and test what they are saying. They are started and you can just click here and notice we have a API name is the slash users. You can mention slash users. Okay, and so these are the some connection problem. Okay, a string cannot be converted to the integer, or somehow we have a string here. Okay, stop and again register. Again, you test. So notice now we are able to communicate our database. Okay, we are able to say this is the my record. Okay, this is the way we can communicate. These things same you can test from the postman as well as or from your application. So here we notice this is the integer number that don't pass in a string. Okay, so these are the simplest way. Now our application is very easily communicate. So we can just what did we just import the required library, register my applications and provide the database configuration, your IP address, port number, username, password and your test database, and just register these application with a MySQL module. And I have MySQL variable, and this from MySQL variable I can say, hey MySQL, make a connection and connect them and create one open cursor for me. And from this cursor, you can go execute and it will pass the code. Once you cursor executed, you can say, hey, fetch all, because I want to fetch not one, fetch all row. Now we receive the row. I'm going to for loop each for from this row, take each row and make this user object and make an a list. And this is the list comprehension we already know. This is the short way you can make a loop, and in the same time you can create this your custom users as well as. And this API you can also test from the postman as well as postman. Here you can say postman, go and just specify the get API and the, so here you can also get your postman. So even you can test postman, and let's say you want to get a specific, I want to get only specific one specific ID, not the all. Then we have to check our API like let's not all. Let's I want to just only one API. You can say by your IP address. Okay. Okay, so here we can develop one API slash users, and here I need an input as a user ID slash user ID, and this is a get API. Again, first we have to check this user ID. Does run the select star from users where ID, whatever the user ID you receive, you pass here, and thus execute the fetch one, because this is the ID one. You can get the fetch one, and just close the cursor. And here we have option. Here you can check if any row found or not. If row found, then return, hey, the particular user you found. Might be we have not found the row, maybe there is no record ID exists. You can say, hey, user is not exist. In both cases, you have to tell, hey, your user found or user not found. Okay, here you can just write. So let us check by ID. So you can say, hey, postman. I'm going to say, hey, let's see, want to test the two and test here. So notice I can get the only two. What I pass the some wrong IP. Let's say by 20. Maybe test, hey, user not found. So we have to also make any kind of a one by one API, maybe two, maybe three. In this way, you can get it. The first, we are able to build the API that get specific one users are all users. In all users, just run the query select star from users, and just we have already cursor MySQL cursor. Just fetch all, and you can loop them and make the object. In the case of specific ID, you run the query where ID is equal to that and get. If row found, then return the row. Else say hey message user is not found. So let's if you get all this is let's user want to add some post new record instead of one. Let's say I'm going to post the new data. So we are going to use the post API to create the new record. Post API and the body you can hear the mentions of email and name. So till now, if you notice, I'm going to post them. I say there is no such API. You cannot develop any post API. You can say, hey, your method not found. So let's implement this our create user. Okay. So for the create user, so we have a same API, but method name is a post. So whenever you are going to use a post, we are going to use a request to because from the client, this is my application, this is my application, this is my application, and this is the client postman. Postman want to send record to the our application, our API. Okay, so here they are writing our JSON message, and they say soon. Due to that, post API we cannot test from the browser because we have not option to put my information on the browser. Okay, due to that, for post API you have to go postman, or you can go curl, or you can go swagger API. That's allowed to send a post record. Okay, but get API, get all, get one, you can test from the browser. So for those scenario, if you want to read some data from the body, so you have to say hey request dot get JSON. And so now we can get the data, and from this data I can want to get the name, I want to get the email, both we have name email. Then if both information we have, we can connect to the database, can say hey open a one cursor, and from cursor.execute insert into user's email value and pass to two value 1 and value 2. This is the name and this is your email. And once executed query, you can say hey record is created successfully. So in this way you can say you are able to successfully post data. So for post API you have to use a postman and curl to test. Okay, so let's test this post API is well, okay, so here you can let's and here we can specify to renewal that's not created. So let's now test again. Let's I'm going to the bot, and this is the email, this is name, and just post API. Now we can create it successfully. Let's get API and check our user created or not. Okay, so notice here email ID 4 bot is also created. So in this way you can create one or more or two. Let's say I want to Smith Smith. Okay, so this is the way you can create the record, and again you go get API and check get API. So notice these are record created. So you can create post new data using the post API. So in the case of post API, you have to pass your body part, your JSON, and provide the JSON detail. Okay, so these are the way we can create read all users. And sometimes what are that existing user already created, and I want to update them. So you can say update API. Okay. So for update API, you let's say this Smith I created, and I want to no, I want to change his email is something different. So I can go, hey, I want to put API and change the email. Okay, change the email, changed, yeah, updated, changed the email. Okay, so if you send this post API, notice, hey, this is not no such method. So we have to develop same URL for the post API. So notice URL would be same for get all. You can say get all. Same URL for your creating in a new record post. Same URL for the put. So get all, put, and post the same URL, only change the body part, right? So let's develop the put URL so that we can able to update this record. So if you go here and say, hey, I am going to put API, uh, okay, I am going to put API. Whenever you are going to update, you say which users you are going to update. You need the user ID. So you can specify user ID 3 or 4 or 5. I am going to update. So you can say user ID. The first, we are going to check the particular user exists or not. So you can just create query select from user where ID. If found, the row found or not. If row not found, you can say user not found. If user not found, you cannot update the record. Okay. If user found, then you can say, hey, let's read the data from the browser and especially retrieve the name and email and run the update query and set email in user for the particular ID and data committed and close the cursor. So in the case of update, you have to check the particular ID exists, then you can update the tables. Update users, and here the set name equal to name, email equal to email for the email ID which ID match. And let's update this. So in the case of Smith, Smith have ID 5. So I can say, hey, let's update ID 5 here, and you can say change the value and put the. So notice our record is updated. What if I say I get 51 something different ID? So notice user not exist. So let's check our get API. This is our get API and check is it updated or not record. So notice your Smith email ID changed. Okay. In this way, you can change. Let's say I want to change the Tom email ID one. So go here. You can say, hey, this is the put API. I want to update the ID one, and now this is the email ID of Tom, username Tom. This is the username Tom. I want to change the email ID Tom, updated email ID, right? So here you can say Tom1 is updated and paste here. And update them, record is updated. Even you can go and verify from the database. Hey, let us say run. So notice here, Tom, this is the updated email ID. So our database is also reflected. You can verify from the database, or you can go verify from your Postman API. Here you can say, let's check get API for user one, get API for user one, and run here. You can get the updated record. If you want to check all, you can get the all the records here created. So these are the very simplest way you can uh, uh, develop API, get all API. Here you go just connect database, read all the data. You want a specific specific one user API you can create. If user not found, you can say data not available. So all the permutation combination you want to post the new record. You can go create the post API. You can say I'm going to create the new record. New record maybe Sam email, okay, and you can just create it. The new record going to the created. If you want to know, no, I want to uh, change the email of the SAN. The first, what is the SAN email ID? The first, let's get API and check the SAN email ID. SAN email ID is the 6. You can go, hey, this is the 6 email ID. Sorry, 6 ID. I'm going to change the SAM123 email ID, right? And update it. Use this put API to update them, record is updated. Let's go and test the user 6 email ID. So now the same 123 is created. If you want to check all the users and create, and you can get lots. This is also 123 created. So this is the way you can update the existing user available. Maybe sometime you want, okay, so I want to delete some record from the database. Okay, so let's create the delete API instead of update API. Okay, delete API. So here let's go and you can say delete API. Just create one route users and check the user ID. Which user ID you want to go to delete? Here method would be the delete. The first again similarly you have to check the particular ID exists or not. So run the query, select a star from the ID and pass the ID. So to run the query, you can just make a cursor from the database, execute query, and fetch one. Let's check that at least this ID exists or not. If this ID exists, then you run the delete from table where the ID is the this ID deleted. If not exists record, you can say user is not exist. So somehow you have to ensure that key. Now once you perform the delete operation, you say hey my SQL connection commit, and then you can say close the cursor. So let's test. I want to delete some API. The Postman. So let's. I'm going to delete this IM6. You can see here say, hey, I'm going to perform the delete operation, and API. I want to delete the 6. What happened? Let's say I want 66. So maybe this is not found for 66 email ID. Let's check. No, I want to delete 6. Let's say, hey, user is deleted. If user deleted, and I can get them. Let's say I can get so user ID 6, no user not found. Even you can check all, notice user ID 6 is deleted. Even you can check from the database, user email ID 6 is no 6 is ID found. Okay, so this is the way you can perform the delete operation. You can say all the CRUD operation, you can simply for get API, you run the select star from users, get the fetch all the row and user return. Okay, if for the connecting database, you can say, hey, MySQL connection, open the cursor. From the cursor, you can execute query or fetch all query. After that, you can close the cursor. Okay, you want to API like users by ID, just pass the ID. You pass the ID, then you go to run the query, select star from users where ID equal to, you pass the ID, and again the fetch one, because this is not a fetch all, because I know this is a specific one ID. You can say fetch one query and get the row. If row exists, then you can say return the row, else you can say user not found. Similarly, you want to create a new record for the post kind of things. So whatever the customers send a record, you can first request object. You can get the get JSON. You can get the data. From this data, I can retrieve the name part, email part, and you can make insert into user in name, email ID, and value. You can pass this name. You can pass this value and execute the query. Right, and simply say, hey, our transaction is committed, and close the cursor and return, hey, user is created. Similarly, you want to update record, that means put API, put need the ID. This is the ID you want to update. Here, this is the ID part. And first you check the particular ID is not. Again, select start from ID. You check if row exists. You can go and retrieve the from the JSON body. Hey, what is the name part? What is the email part? And run the update query. Update you just to update cannot table. Then you can say set name equal to email equal to what the ID. And once you done, you can close the database. And else you say, hey, if row not found, then you can say, hey, user is the not found. And the last, you can create, if you want to update in a delete API, just say delete, which is ID you want to delete. The first you have to check this ID exists or not. Using the fetch one, select this from ID. If exists, row is not exists, you can say user not found. If user already exists, then you can delete from the user where user ID this, and you can say, hey, MySQL, commit this query and return user deleted successfully. So these are some basics API. You can very simplified way you can develop. So whatever the using the this Flask framework, you can say existing library, they offer is a very simplified way. You can just write your method and annotate this is the REST API. Now this is become a REST API, and this Flask as application allow you can start as a run application so that your application become a server side application backend code. They always running to receive the request from this specific URL, specific URL, right now. So this is the point which I want to convey. In this way, simplified way, you can develop the REST API for using this Flask framework, right now. So what till now we have did, we have developed our one app. In these applications, we are using the two third-party module. One is the Flask and one is the Flask MySQL, MySQL DB. And Flask help us to develop the API. API means whatever the method we have to have just make the URL and make us the, from this you want to communicate. So I can use this MySQL connector, all the MySQL IP address, port, username, password, database. I can say that using this information, this MySQL driver, MySQL help us here, and our application can communicate to the database. And whatever the query you send, go to the MySQL cursor, connect to database, save it, and return. So whatever the our client, we are is the client as a postman. Postman send the data, application receive the data, make the request to the database, and data is stored in the database permanently. Okay, so in this way, your client code, your server side code, or your database side codes are integrated. So how your clients are integrated to the my backend server using the Flask framework. Our framework Flask open application at a specific port 5000 port, and anyone can pass the IP address and the particular port. My application going to always running. So our Flask framework make our application as a backend server. So this is a backend server ready, and Flask also help us to make the URL so that the client can communicate my application via URL. They're not going to call the method, but URL, that is the REST API. And once our API receive the request, they can communicate with the MySQL connector, they connect to the database and execute the query. The very simple way, simplified way. It is the best way to do make a better understanding about the client, our server-side code, and our database. How the communication happen. Let's do the practice. Let's write some code, develop some API, and make the integration. Maybe this is a MySQL integration. Similarly, you can do the Postgres and other database, whatever the database you want. Python's library provide communication connector for the different database. Let's just according to your database, you can choose which database, which MySQL connector you require. Yeah, which database connector you require. And Python have a very rich set of library. Just we use them. And finally, we are able to build our microservice, you can say microservice REST API with microservice, very simplified way. So that is the point for today I have. Hope this information is a little bit helpful for you. And last note, thank you.